for decades, I should say, we've had this thing called the counter jihad, and the counter jihad movement is it's an anti-Islam movement. It's been around since 9/11. My father was a pioneer in the counter jihad, but my father did not want to be anti-religion. My father believed that the way to fix Islamic society is to promote Christianity to Muslims. That's what my father believed and still believes. My father saw fighting Islam as a Christian movement, really. And what happened after 9, so my dad was doing this stuff before 9/11. My father was on the AOL chat groups. He was arguing with Muslims back in the 90s. And I have memories of the 90s. I have memories from the late 90s seeing my dad debating with Muslims on the AOL chat groups, everyone. This was before YouTube, before Twitter, before all that stuff. This was AOL back in the day. And after 9/11, the whole thing changed. It became atheistic. You had what was known as what was it called? The three horsemen of atheism. You had Dawkins, Harris. It was Dawkins, Harris, Hitchens. Four horsemen. Dawkins, Harris, Hitchens, and there was some guy. His last name was Dennett or something. I don't remember his last name. Some white guy who no one cares about anymore. The thing about the horsemen of atheism was that who really came on top at the end, right? There was Dawkins, Harris, and Hitchens. The other guy, Daniel Dennett, whatever his name was, people don't even talk about that guy anymore. Who cares? Buenos tardes, Andres Lopez. And what ended up happening was that just a select few of those guys went on top. And those were Harris and Hitchens, those two guys. Dawkins had a point of fame. He had an apex moment of fame, but it didn't last too long. People still talk about Dawkins, but I don't think he's anywhere near the fame that people like Sam Harris has. I don't think he's anywhere near the fame that Hitchens still has, even after Hitchens, even though Hitchens has been dead for years, his fame still lives on. I would say that out of all of them, Harris is definitely the one who's on top. Harris is definitely the guy who is on top. And Harris right now, I think Harris is more famous now than he ever has been. He's been at a point of high fame for a number of years now. He's been pretty big. But the thing I think the reason why, and I'm going off into a different topic, but I think the reason why Harris still maintained fame and even increased his level of fame was because Harris, he adapted and he expanded, right? He expanded his points of interest. He expanded the topics that he talks about. Because the thing is that atheism was a big trend in the early 2000s. Now, if you guys are my age, you'll remember that when you were in high school, there was a big thing called the New Atheism, right? That was called the New Atheist Movement or something like that. And the book that there were three books that really, really were the canon for the New Atheism. There was, of course, Dawkins's book, God is the God Delusion. And then there was Harris's book, I think it was called The End of Faith. And then there was Hitchens' book, The God Delusion. I think The God Delusion was probably the most famous. Or maybe God is Not Great. Yeah, Hitchens wrote a book called God is Not Great. Those three books became foundational for New Atheism. What ended up happening was that New Atheism became very cringe, and it just died. New Atheism it's greatly associated with fedora wearers. So the fedora wearer who's cringe, who wants to argue about every little damn thing, and he's annoying and obnoxious, that is what the New Atheism became known for. That's what it became known for. How sunny is it outside? It's pretty sunny outside. Pretty miserable weather outside, I will say. I love rain and clouds. But that's what New Atheism became. And so New Atheism died. And Dawkins, I don't think Dawkins ever really adapted. He's just an atheist guy. He's talking about the trans stuff now, but who's not talking about that? Let's be real here. Dawkins never really expanded seriously. He just talked about atheism, 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 and atheism died. The trend of atheism died. So what's there to talk about? Why should we listen to Dawkins? Harris expanded. He just doesn't talk about atheism. He talks about all sorts of different political subjects. He bashes Trump. He's gotten into the whole genetics and IQ controversy, which is a very controversial topic. He's gotten into politics, the whole George Floyd thing. I mean, Sam Harris has expanded, and that's why Harris is very famous. The problem with Harris, and I don't understand why Harris is famous. I understand that he maintained his fame and expanded his fame because he expanded his topics of discussion, but I don't understand how he got so popular. I don't know why. I understand how, but I don't understand the why. Why is this guy popular? Because I remember listening to Harris when I was in high school, and I found the guy incredibly boring. I still find him incredibly boring. Harris is good if you want to fall asleep. Well, not even that. I think Dawkins was a much better speaker than Harris. Well, Hitchens was the best speaker out of all of them. Ortho Christos makes this point. He says Hitchens was eloquent and a smart debater. Harris went off the rails after interview with trigonometry. He basically said he would vote for Joe even if dead kids were found in his son's garden. Oh, I remember hearing about this kind of stuff, and it was just so crazy. Like, totally crazy, unhinged. Listen, you all know what I'm about to say, right? It's crazy, unhinged kosher-la. I mean, that's what it is. It's complete pharisaical, off the rails, unhinged pill pool lunacy. I mean, that's what it is. And if you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, right? The guy is of the spirit of the tribe of Judah. But it's insanity. But you know what? He was always this way. He was always this way. I remember back in the early 2000s, he was supporting the war in Iraq. He was supporting torture. The guy is crazy. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Look at the guy. I'm not surprised that he acts in such a way, in such a manner. It's crazy. Or to quote, to say the same word with the cadence of Finkelstein, it's crazy. It's crazy. And Finkelstein I like Finkelstein. I mean, I've grown to like him. I understand that he's wrong on some things. I don't agree with everything he says, but I have grown to like his work. I started looking at Finkelstein's work in 2018. Didn't always agree with him, but I didn't agree with what he said after October the 7th. But I think that he makes a lot of good points, makes a lot of true points. But yeah, I mean, Harris, I just don't understand why Harris is popular. Like I said, I understand how he maintained his fame, but I don't understand why. Because the guy is not a good speaker. He's very, let me just, let's get into the whole thing. Who cares what this guy has to say? He's crazy. I think if anyone, listen, if you supported torture back in the day, and if you supported the Iraq war, and you haven't really changed, I just don't understand. Olea Yan says, what happened with the hair? What happened with the hair? It's my hair. My genetics. My ancestors came from the desert, like Moses did, from the Exodus, from Egypt. Fedora guy. Milady. Yep. It just became... Listen, I dealt with atheists back in those days. Back in the early 2000s, early 20-teens, I dealt with that new atheist type. And they were all so annoyingly, obnoxiously cringe. It was amazing. I remember I was in Colorado, and there was this lady I knew. I was staying at her house. I mean, she wasn't my girlfriend, okay? She was married. She had a family. I was staying at her house. That's all. That's it. But I was staying at this family's house, and she said, my son's coming over. And the husband looks at her and says, why? Now, listen, if a father doesn't want to see his son, you know there's about to be some problems, right? Like, you know there's about to be some problems. And this guy comes over, and as soon as he walks into the room, all right, he was this part Korean, part Jewish guy. I remember. And as soon as he comes in, you could just feel the negative energy in the room. Have you ever seen people like that? As soon as they walk into a room, the negative energy just explodes. The negative energy is just everywhere. Yeah. That was this guy. I mean, completely sucked the energy right out of the room. He walks right in and is almost immediately after talking, he's already arguing with me. Just wants to argue about everything. And he brings up the subject of gay marriage. And I said, well, I don't agree with gay marriage. I don't agree with it, you know. And at that time, how old was I at the time? I was 20. This was late. This had to have been either late 2010 or 2011. So I was either 20 or I think I was 21 years old at the time. And I said, I just don't agree with gay marriage. And I said, gay marriage is an oxymoron. It's not a marriage because two men cannot get married. Marriage is only between a man and a woman. Anything else is an oxymoron. It's not marriage. And this guy says, well, and he talked, his voice was like Ben Shapiro. His voice was straight up Ben Shapiro. His voice was straight up Ben Shapiro. That was his voice. Just to give you an idea, he looked like Ben Shapiro, but with the slight Korean features. And his voice tone was that of Ben Shapiro. And he says, it is marriage. It is. It's marriage. And I said, no, it's not. Just because you call it marriage doesn't make it marriage. And he says, no, that's how it works. It's marriage because we have called it marriage. It's called a marriage, therefore it's a marriage. You can't say it's not a marriage. So I said to him, okay. I pulled the Michael Savage on this guy. I said, okay. So if a guy marries a donkey and it's declared marriage, are you going to call it marriage? And this guy's father just starts laughing. And the laughter from his father, I mean, in just a few seconds, you could see all the problems with his family. You could see the root of the problem in the family, right? There's some negligence that's going on. There's some, there is maybe some sort of, or there was maybe some sort of case where the parents are making fun of the kid and are they ruin the kid's self-esteem. I mean, there's all sorts of psychological dynamics going on here. Because the father laughs, and the moment the father laughs, the kid's face, I mean, he was older than me. He's probably like 22, 23. The son's face immediately turns red. And at that moment, I realize, okay, there's some psychological problems here, and there are some very detrimental family dynamics taking place that I have nothing to do with, and I just walked into. It was like walking right into a war zone that you got no part of, and the bullets are flying. And this guy immediately gets up and walks right into the garage. And he walks right into the garage, and he was very hurt. And I understand that. He was very hurt that his father would laugh at him. Especially in the middle of a discussion with a complete stranger. I'm the stranger. And his father, I don't think his father, listen, I don't think you should laugh at your son. But the father couldn't help himself because I gave him a good argument. If a man marries a donkey, what is it like? I did a little bit of pill pull myself, a little bit of Talmudic pill pull myself. I said, hey, if a guy marries a donkey, is it marriage now? What is he? So son leaves and he goes into the garage, he's all pissed off, and then the mom goes in there, gives him a talking, and then he comes back and then he apologized to me, and I said no problem, and that was the end of it. But that was in a way it was a product of that time. You see, it was a product of that time period. that new atheism and that argumentative spirit and that spirit of debate that was always there, and it just wanted to argue for the sake of arguing, and it wanted to argue over things that are just obvious, right? It's obvious that it's not marriage. It's obvious what marriage is. It's obvious that a legitimate marriage is a man and a woman. A woman has children. A man has sperm. A woman has eggs. A man has the sperm. I mean, it's scientific, right? It's biological. So, but the new atheists and these types of people, they want to argue over the obvious, right? It's obvious a man can't become a woman. It's obvious a woman can't become a guy. So why are we arguing over this bullshit? Right? Why are we arguing over this bullshit? They want to argue over reality and all this stuff. But that was that spirit, you see. And that spirit, I think, became so obnoxiously annoying that people just started to shun it. And I think that's the reason why it died. Contrarians are annoying as hell. Argue for the sake of argument, and you can always tell when someone is arguing with you for the sake of arguing. You can always tell. You can always tell because they will automatically debate with you on something that's so obvious, right? It's like arguing over whether or not the sky is blue, is it green, is blue, and you shouldn't be involved in those kind of arguments. Arrogance, of course, arrogance is a big part of it. That's right. It's a power thing. That's all it is. It's a big power thing. I'm going to dominate over you. And I'm not going to dominate over you physically. I'm going to dominate over you psychologically, or I'm going to dominate over you intellectually. And that's what it is. It's a power move. That's what it is, guys. It's a complete power move. And what was I going to say? Yeah, it's a complete power move. And you have these people, they just want to argue with you over everything. And what I've learned is if you know someone and they're disagreeing with you sincerely, and it's rare to see this, but it does happen. When they're disagreeing with you sincerely, you know that they're sincere when you bring up a fact and they say, "Oh, you're right about that. Oh, you're right about that." Right? And if you see that, then, or if you hear that, you can say, "Okay, well, this guy seems sincere." But when you got a guy who's just talking out of his ass, and and for example, if you're arguing about Israeli war crimes, let's go right to it, right? Let's go to the most controversial subject in geopolitics: Israeli war crimes. And you could say, well, there was something that happened called the Shabra and Shatila massacre back in 1982. Israeli proxies butchered at least over 1,000 people in a matter of 3 days. And Israel watched over the whole thing and let it happen and didn't stop it. In fact, encouraged it and enabled it. And they put soldiers around the refugee camps, and they guarded the whole place as it happened. And they knew what was going on. The soldiers knew what was going on. And you bring up all the facts, right? And then somebody comes out and says, well, actually, that wasn't really a war crime because Palestinians were terrorists. As soon as I hear that, I know, okay, I'm dealing with someone who's bad faith. If you cannot agree that massacring people and raping people and pillaging for 3 straight days is immoral, then I don't want to talk to you. Honestly, it's bad faith. It's a bad faith argument. Now, if I'm invited to Piers Morgan's show and they want me to debate, Douglas Murray, I would do it. Not because I think I'm going to beat Douglas Murray in a debate, or I could beat Douglas Murray in a debate, but not because I think I'm going to convince Douglas Murray or whoever they put in front of me to argue with, but because that is a show that has a big platform, big audience, and that is an opportunity to spread my thoughts and to inculcate my beliefs, right? Live debates that have big audiences, I think you should at least almost always accept to participate in them, because those are opportunities, right? Those are opportunities. But it's interesting. I think Douglas Murray, he really exposed himself. Douglas Murray, by the way, he has revived in fame. Since October the 7th, he revived in fame. Now, he was he had a big name before October the 7th. Don't get me wrong. He wrote a book about the death of Europe, something like that. A lot of people bought the book. So he did have fame, but his fame definitely rose up after October the 7th for obvious reasons. He's a Zionist. Zionists want to hear his opinions, etc., etc. And the thing I don't like about, here's the thing. I've known about Douglas Murray for years. I've known about Douglas Murray going all the way back to the year 2016. I knew about Douglas Murray. I never liked Douglas Murray. Still don't like Douglas Murray. I think Douglas Murray is a very evil person. Very evil person. He is with the party of Sodom. Many years ago, he was bashing, I think it was Uganda, for its laws against Skittles. Its laws against the whole Sodom thing, and I just never liked the guy. I just never liked him. The thing about Douglas Murray that I don't like, also another thing that I don't like about him, is that he'll debate Muslims. He'll debate some imam, some Palestinian guy. And he'll say he'll say some witty comment with his British accent. The British accent makes him, to the ears of people, he sounds very intelligent. Go figure, whatever. But when it came down to an opportunity to debate Norman Finkelstein, Douglas Murray refused to debate Norman Finkelstein. And he told Piers Morgan, I will not debate Norman Finkelstein. Well, why not? Will you debate? Because he said, well, Norman Finkelstein is a psychopath. Oh, so are you saying that all the Muslims that you've debated are not psychopaths? Only Norman Finkelstein's a psychopath, and you're not going to debate him because you don't debate psychopaths. No, the reason why Douglas Murray doesn't want to debate Norman Finkelstein is because Murray fears Finkelstein. That's the bottom line, because Finkelstein is a very capable debater. He is a very capable debater. Finkelstein is. And he knows all the Human Rights Watch organization's reports. He's read them all. He knows a lot of the details. He knows about the Goldstone report, and he could really articulate all those facts. And it's difficult to argue with a guy like Finkelstein. And once I saw that, I said, okay, so we know what Murray is about. Murray is about using that British accent to tickle the ears of people because he sounds intelligent. And he'll debate Muslims, and we all know that a lot of Muslim people, let's be real here, they're not the best debaters. A lot of Palestinian people, let's be real here, they're not the best debaters. A lot of pro-Palestine activists are not the best debaters. Israel has a whole army of hosperists who are capable debaters. They'll bring up the Palestinian crimes, they'll bring up terrorism, Hamas, all that stuff. And you need a sharp mind to argue with those people. And Finkelstein has a sharp mind. And Finkelstein has spent decades reading about the subject. He's written a lot of books on the subject. He is not an easy person to argue with. And Murray refused to debate Finkelstein. As soon as I saw that, I said, okay, we all know what Murray is about. And that is looking sharp, looking intelligent. If he was truly a very capable debater, then he would accept to debate Finkelstein. But he hasn't. He hasn't. Why not? Because he knows he'll lose. Or at least he knows that it will be very difficult. And he doesn't want a difficult debate. He wants to debate some Muslim guy with an accent. And when you have a guy with a British accent versus a guy with a Middle Eastern accent, perception factors in a lot of debates. Factors in debate. It really does. And the perception is, British accent, intelligent. Oh, shut up. Now, what sounds more savvy? If I say, oh, shut up. Or if I say, oh, why don't you just shut up? Right? To a lot of people, ooh, witty, sarcastic, a good retort, good comeback. Now, if you put a Middle Eastern guy versus Murray, well, the Middle Eastern guy is going to say, Pierce, they are human rights violations. There is genocide happening. And then Murray is going to say, it is actually Hamas that is committing the genocide of the Palestinian people by putting up human shield. And then you read the comments, right? Murray killed them. Murray won. Put Finkelstein versus Murray. Now, if you want to put a Middle Eastern guy versus Murray, get Mr. Mouin Rabbani. I think Mouin Rabbani I think he's a capable debater. Muin Rabbani, yep, I got his name right. Yeah, he's Palestinian, a European Palestinian guy. I think he is a capable debater. And he has a slight accent, but he's very articulate, and I think he would be I think he would be difficult for Murray in a debate.